Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Always Almost There, Day After Show Live. We're here. Today is Wednesday, June 28th, and we are here to talk about Goose's latest visit to Ohio. How are you, Neil?
I'm doing all right, man. It's the eve of my first Goose show since March, right? Is it March? Is that what it
Yeah.
was? Man, it's a
Been
wicked
3
long time
months.
ago. I'm super stoked to go to Peach tomorrow. I'm super stoked to see you at Peach tomorrow. I'm super
It's gonna be
stoked to
fun.
see maybe some friends at Peach tomorrow. I don't know who's going to be there. I know some people who just have dipped at the last minute, and I'm disappointed in those people. You know who you are. But yeah, super stoked about all of this. It's going to be 3 Goose shows over the next week or so. And man, I couldn't be more excited. Couldn't be more excited.
It's gonna be an amazing, amazing weekend. I'm so excited to get down there tomorrow and see Goose. It's only been a month for me, but it still feels like a really long time after seeing them 17 times in the span of 2 months. Um, but that's how these things go. We've got two great guests. Yes, we've got 2 great guests who are waiting in the green room that they requested. And we're going to bring them on now. We've got Jeff and we've got Mike. Hello, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Hey, how y'all doing?
Yeah, we're doing great. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. For those of you who don't know, we are very honored to have the mayor of Ohio making his debut on Always Almost There today. Very, very exciting. Now, we do have some requests from the chat for James. So
we'll go queue him up. We will queue him up in a moment.
All right, fantastic.
He's with mommy right now. We will get him, Anna.
Good. We're looking forward to the James Morosky pod debut for sure. Well, let's talk about last night's show a little bit. First thoughts, Mike, as you're getting into the venue, setting up where you were, what the vibes were like pre-show.
Sure. Vibes are always good. This feels like a home venue to me. I think I saw the first year it was open. I saw Panic. I actually fell asleep because I had too much fun in the lot beforehand. I was younger. I don't do that anymore. I stay awake for the shows. I've seen Sturgill. I've seen Trey, Primus, White Zombie, Rob Zombie. Anyway, so I love the venue. I always feel comfortable there. We got there right before showtime, so it was nice and cool for us to get up, find a spot, Pete's side on the lawn. Layout vibes were good. People were happy, handing out slaps. And it's just, any show in Ohio feels like a home show. So I was biased in that sense. It felt great. It felt great to see Goose there for the first time,
Love it. Jeff, what about you? What your vibe pre-show, where you ended up?
So I hadn't been to this place a bunch like Mike had. I've been kind of wanting to go here, but it was this was my first time finally checking it out, and I wound up in the back of the pit, maybe like 12 people back from the stage, dead hung out there all night. It was a great spot.
Awesome. Love it. Sounds like a great spot. Neil, how were you feeling last night going into this show? Fantasy picks were a little hard yesterday, as we discussed on the pod on Monday. Everything played last night is off the table for Peach. So how are you feeling going into it?
Well, I was feeling going into the show like I had no idea what they were going to play.
Yep.
And I was excited that the show was so early. Because last night, man, I love like a good, properly slotted 2-set East Coast time zone show. That is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Yeah, especially, man, you get to bed like early. You wake up fresh the next day. I feel fresh right now. Because of that, I'm so excited.
And you're ready to run yourself into the ground for 4 days.
That is absolutely what I'm about to do. I can't wait to see what I look like at the end of all that. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful thing. Yeah. I haven't done like a 4-day fest in really long time.
Well, we will. We'll talk about that when we get there. But yeah, going into this show, obviously, as I said, like everything they played last night is not getting played tomorrow. So kind of hard to see, especially the opener. But it was really interesting as this show unfolded, especially because of what we talked about on the pod on Monday. There was a lot that transpired as this show unfolded. And before we get into the set list specifics, your point about the well-timed East Coast show.
Yeah.
Shout out to Goose's clock management last night. They went on. They went on 20 minutes after ticket time,
Yeah.
And it was a pretty lengthy 2-set show with a 12, 13-minute encore. Like they
Yep.
did really well. I don't
Yep.
know if it felt that way at the venue as well, but
Yep.
I was really happy with how that panned out on the couch, especially with a long first set.
Yeah, the cadence of it. I'm a cadence guy for and playing music, and maybe that's what it is, right? I mean, Ryan, I know you get this, the way you learn the rhythm, the time, everything, and like translating that to a show writ large. And last night was so cool, and it's like I had time to mess around with Lucas Anderton at set break, and say hi to Copiel and run around with James, and then they were right back out. I mean, the set break wasn't long either. And I think a guy in the elevator in my hotel put it best. I got in the elevator and he looked at me and goes, "Well, that was an enjoyable way to spend 3 hours." Because it was, but I think he was alluding though to this point, right? That it was very clearly this perfectly timed performance.
Yeah. Jeff, did you feel that as well?
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty good clock management. They started, 15, 20 minutes after showtime, which is pretty much on time for Goose. And I mean, set break was only about 20 minutes. They really crammed in some maximum music for the Columbus market, which, I mean, they clearly love the Cincinnati, Columbus, Louisville area. And, it was a cool vibe at the show.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into the show. Let's start off with our first few songs here. We have a Switchin' opener, followed by Honeybee, first one since the last Ohio show in Cleveland in March, and then Atlas Dogs. Jeff, take us through these first three songs. How were you feeling? What were the vibes?
I mean, when Switchin' started up, I heard the first note, and I was respectful of a 10-second delay, but then I immediately started harassing Neil because, switching over. And, I'm pretty sure that was my first time seeing one. And it was great, little West Montgomery ditty, some boogaloo type music. And it was just a lot of fun. And, Honeybee, I didn't think it hit quite the same heights as the one in Cleveland did. So the one in Cleveland actually, I mean, it went off at the end. Now you can say what you will about the placement of that Honeybee and where it showed up in the show. The placement for this Honeybee was fine. Song number 2 in a kind of long songy set, good spot for a Honeybee if you're going to play it. Coach got to come out and do his rain stick thing, and vibes were high. The live crowd loves a Honeybee, and what did and then what came after that again? Atlas Dogs.
And then Atlas Dogs.
Yeah, so that felt like a bust out, like so many other songs in the show were, which I know we'll get to. Even though it really wasn't a bust out, I think that was like a 6-7 show gap. But and the one before that was maybe a little more of a bust out. But shout out to Shawnee Mack, who called that as the opener, and almost got it as the opener, and then Matt from Math called The Flea as an opener, and didn't get that as an opener, but also got that.
There we go. Nice. Mike, how are you feeling?
Shortly
these first
after.
three, Switchin', Honeybee,
I was
Dogs.
with the two of those guys and some others for most of the show.
Ooh. Mike, how are you feeling on these first three songs?
I thought that I don't have much different, quite frankly, than Jeff. Honeybee was planned as the opener, right? On that, I think, and then they threw in the Switchin', which it's a perfect spot for that, in my opinion. And it was super cool. And it's like, oh, they're back in Ohio, because what I've at least noticed, it feels like all the shows in Ohio, both sets are like completely different. Maybe that's just me. Whether it was Cleveland last year, New Year's, they're two like distinct sets. And this one, it made sense with this kind of like, punchy sort of opener, and then an upbeat Honeybee, which I agree with Jeff, didn't go quite as hard in the jam sense, but I like the song. I think it's fun. And then an Atlas Dogs, cool for me, was my first one.
Nice.
So that was really cool, and it felt like something fresh. But Sean, I got Sean in the second set. He was with me the second set. I mean, you can look at my set list book, because he was calling stuff too with me, and he was almost right a couple times. And I wrote it down. I trusted him, but my set list book is messed up because of Sean. And you can see I put a note in the book if you enlarge the picture, and I blame him for it. So hello, Sean.
Don't trust other
people. Hashtag blame Shawnee.
If you're still taking set lists with a pen and a book like me, if you still do that, don't listen. No, I'm just kidding. It was great. I thought it was a great way to start the show.
I love it. Yeah, it was interesting. You know, I love that they keep audibling, switching. You know, this is the second time this year. Second, right?
Yep.
They played it in Madison. Was the other time? I'm not
Madison.
doubting myself.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
the Honeybee. You know, your point about Jeff. Your point about the placement. I think this is the ideal spot for a Honeybee if you're playing it in a show. You know, warm summer evening. You know, nice gentle song. Rain stick action. You know, let coach stick, if you will. And Atlas Dogs. And Atlas Dogs is always fun. You know, it's still hoping this one gets jammed out again soon. You know, you know, the last one that was jammed out was in October. It's been a little while.
Yeah. Well, it's the, you know, it hasn't been good since the first. Well, not it hasn't been good. It hasn't been as good as the first one since the first one.
The second one.
Second one. Sorry, the second one. Which was what, Portland?
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, man, Atlas Dogs always good. Like switching. I want to like take this opportunity to thank all the people who reached out to me with thoughts.
Thoughts and prayers.
Opener. Like the amount of notifications that I got when that started was like kind of hilarious, and it's just really funny that the switching thing has, like, I don't know, somehow become attached to me, and like when people hear switching, they immediately think of me. But that is, I don't know, it's a killer one to open. It's opened some serious heat shows, and you know, this is like another example of that. Right? They came out and they said, we're going to do something different at the show. And I think we talked about this before the show started, but I saw there two ways this show was going to go. Mm-hmm. And we were talking, when Happy was talking about what he thought they were going to play, he had all of these songs that hadn't been played in forever. And we were like, dude, you specifically, Ryan, were saying like, that's a really good guess as to what they might play tonight.
Yeah.
Even though it's really, really gutsy. Nailed it. It was just all songs, and this was kind of the indication of that, right? So you get like kind of a bust out, and it's actually like pretty short gap for switch in, but then you get like a giant in Goose terms, right? I feel like I have to qualify.
I mean,
this
29 show gap for Honeybee. That's the, again, first of many biggest in the song's history gaps of the night.
Right. And, you know, I took some heat for that last night, saying like, these are huge gaps, which like people who are fans of bands that have been around for 25, 30 years and more kind of found that to be laughable. But, you know, in Goose terms, relatively, these are giant bust outs for them of original songs that they once wore out, right? We talked about this at the end of the last podcast, which
we listed a bunch of songs.
We listed almost all of these songs and said, it's been, you know, this amount of shows since this song, and this amount of shows since this song, and this amount of shows. And it just seems crazy because they have so many songs these days. And then here they all are, all at once, which is what a treat, man. It's just so exciting. And I'm sure we're going to come back to this point a bunch as we talk about the show. But the Honeybee and the Switchin' were kind of the first indication of that.
Absolutely. So then we get into the center of this set, and I'm going to let Mike talk about his name for this segment here. But we've got Jive 2, Time to Flee, Jive Lee. Mike, start us off.
the Time to Lee, it's wild. And the Jive 2 was so welcomed after the first three. I mean, I was dancing and bobbing, and then I started rocking. And Jive 2 is one of my favorite Goose tunes. It's one of my first favorite Goose tunes. I think back to my first favorite Fish tune in 93 or 94 is Stash. And whenever I hear Stash, I feel like, I remember when I fell in love with Fish. It's kind of how I feel when I hear Jive 2 and a couple others. Mm-hmm. So that was really special for me. And they had, of course, played it in Cleveland when they did the trilogy. And just like in Cleveland, and just like when they play in Ohio, for whatever reason, they do these wild things. Just trying to flee into that Jive Lee, which was perfectly placed as a burner right there. Like, I used to teach English for 10 years, the 5-paragraph essay, and if each set has 5 paragraphs, or the third paragraph right at Jive Lee, just boom. And it was almost like Time to Flee was this like intro, like foreplay long time with Boston, right? Like Jive Lee, or Time to Flee was reduced to this, not reduced, right? Because it worked great. It works great. But, you know, this like little teaser, and then bam. It was really cool. I thought it was a really cool segment, those three. And James was dancing around pretty good. And he'll tell you about it, maybe. When he
awesome. Well, we'll see what we get out of him.
Yeah,
Jeff, what did you think of the Time to Lee?
The time to leave, is that what we're calling it? I
The
like
official
that.
name.
Yeah.
Time to leave.
Listen,
Yeah.
you had the Cleveland Califecta. Now we've got the time to Lee.
Look at this. It's like the namers of these weird Ohio jive suites are on this pod today. So yeah, I was also in Cleveland, and you know, much like that was cool. I was noticing a lot of similarities between the two shows, and you know, I really wasn't expecting a Lee at all this show for some reason, but they did the two, and and then when they weren't doing Lee, it was like, oh, all right, makes sense. And when they started playing Flea, I was very excited because that was another, in relative terms, bust out, and I can't help, even though it really worked, I felt a little bit gypped. Like not getting the big triumphant peak and Flea, like that. To me, that is Time to Flee, like that big Rick guitar line that starts the jam and then ends the jam at the end of the song. So I was really looking forward to soaring a little bit there, but we didn't get that part of the song. We got the the EP version, and it worked really well with what it was trying to do. So and that Lee was so good that within about 3 minutes of it, I had forgotten all about what we didn't get in Flea. And I think by the end of the show, I was wondering, like, did they play that part of Flea or not? I can't even remember.
Yeah, who knows at this point?
Right.
Yeah. That Lee was awesome. Clav tweets were had. Mike, I think you beat me because you were at the show, and so it happened before.
Yeah.
But I like to see everyone getting involved in the Clav tweets.
Yeah,
it's very nice. Fun. Twitter might restrict your ability to do certain things if you do it too much. But this Lee was awesome. Peter just attacking the keyboards at the beginning. His whirly patch on the Nord and the Clav, and just going absolutely crazy. I was curious as it unfolded and we got into a little more of an adventurous jam segment. I was curious if they were going to find their way back to the ending because we heard a lot of unfinished exploratory jive Lees in 2022. But they found their way back. It was solid, like 14, 15 minutes. Really excellently, really amazing first set jam. And yeah, as you said, Jeff, I was a little bit upset at the beginning to not be getting that Flea jam because I was looking for like, great, we're 4 or 5 songs in, time for the first, first big jam. But by the time that Lee was unfolding, I wasn't worried anymore.
Yeah, quality Lee. That was the first big jam of the show, and the whole tone of the night changed at that point. I mean, they kept on with some similar themes, but they locked in there and stayed locked in the rest of the night, I thought.
100%. Neil?
Yeah, I mean, Jive Lee is too good of a song to go more than 20 shows without being played. And yeah, dude, this one was really, really good. It had a really awesome jam at the end of it. We've said this before. What I love about Jive Lee is that you just get every moment that Jive Lee is played, you are getting a jam.
Yeah.
So there's no getting through a song to get to a jam. Not saying that the songs are bad, but that is one of the beauties of Jive Lee is like you are going straight into funk and then beyond, right?
Right. Like it was around the same length as the Dripfield, but had like double the length of improvisation in it because Dripfield has like 8 minutes of song.
Exactly. So yeah, and this one's pretty special. It has a really, really familiar jam in it that I could not put my finger on last night or today. I spent about 20 minutes trying to figure out where I heard it before, and I couldn't. And I will, and I'll tweet about it when I do because I'm not going to give up on this. But it is a really cool jam. It's definitely a familiar jam. Don't remember what it is yet. If anybody knows, by all means, put in a comment. 100%. Please let us know. But
free me from this prison of being a nerd.
Yeah.
Right on the tip of the tongue.
So this is where I started to realize that the set list that I feared would happen was going to happen, and it was all happening in that moment. And then that's when I started tweeting about it, where I was like, something's happening, and started tweeting about like all of the song gaps that were happening in the show. And yeah, I love the way that they did the Flea and then jump right out of it into the Lee. And I wonder after that if we're going to see Flea reappear at another show. And then I wonder if there will be a debate on whether or not it is a Flea prize. But this has been done before. This was done in 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, October 2020. They played it on 10/15. They teased it on 10/17. Then they finished it on 10/19.
Right. And so I wonder if that's what's happening here. But in any case, the great injustice was solved. We got Jive to Jive Lee and Time to Flee. Those are three songs that should never go away for that long. Yet I do feel a little bit bummed that there was no Time to Flee jam, which Time to Flee does jam. You can say what you will about how you feel about the song, but the jam is always good. It's never bad. And there are times where some of my favorite Goose jamming is in that song. So I'm curious to see what happens. Maybe it shows up tomorrow night. Maybe not. Maybe it shows up at Resonance. You just don't know.
We shall see.
But I do like the set list trickery. It's fun. And that's another kind of example of what was happening at this show. The band clearly was having a blast. I don't think I've ever seen Ben look that happy. And he usually looks really happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, all cool stuff.
Yeah, it was great. And then, so obviously, after Lee, and we're starting to realize, and we're looking at the list of songs that we talked about on the pod on Monday, and so obviously the next song was the Old Man's Boat. It was never going to be anything else at this point. It had to be Boat. Again, longest gap in Lee's history, followed by the longest gap in Old Man's Boat's history. And this boat is so cool. It's not. I said before we hit record, this isn't going on my playlist, but I'm gonna listen to this a lot because this jam is so cool. Peter playing with that arpeggiator on the synth, just laying into those textures, and I'm so jealous that you got to experience that live. I talked about the how Honeybee fits on a warm summer evening. I'm just thinking about those kind of tones on a warm summer evening at an outdoor show. Like, must have been insane. Jeff, what were you feeling during this boat?
I mean, vibes were high. I like Boat. I like the first part of the song, and I always love the jam. And with this one, I mean, for those of you who haven't heard it yet, before even going into the jam, things just kind of blanked out, and then there was just a little bit of loud silence that then had a little bit of arpeggiator start to trickle through, and Peter started kind of doing some weird things with the synths and the arpeggiator, and then all of a sudden, Rick started strumming and Trevor started to come in with that bass line, and I was like, okay, yeah, they're really doing this. And within about 5 seconds of that all locking together, I just had this epiphany where I was like, where has this been the entire history of the song? Because this works and this is perfect. And they should have been doing this all along. And I want to see it like this again. I've heard words like workshopping being tossed around against Old Man's Boat. People have mentioned that song got workshopped by the band or something. And if this was the end result of that workshop, I'm here for it, because that was just a great vibe, and it took an amazing jam and it just made it that much more fun and swimmy and kind of head trippy. And it really it opened the floodgates of the arpeggiator for later in the night, and we'll get back to that some more.
100%. Mike, what were your thoughts on this boat?
I loved it. I always loved this song. And they played it. The other interesting thing to me was they played it in Cleveland the year before. Right. So a lot of these songs had been like in Cleveland, and now they're in these new orders with this other. So that was kind of going on in my head. And then for me personally, so, Katie and James had just left, and I had just jammed really, really hard. And I run like 70 miles the past 2 days, and I hadn't sat down yet. So that came on, and I laid down on the ground.
We're not worthy.
And I looked up at the sky, and I was feeling good, and I was feeling more like myself then than I was earlier. And it was like, so personally, my experience of it, and then the arpeggiator on top of it, which again, we see later. And I just love Old Man's Boat. You may have a special guest soon. You'll see him if he pops up. He's peeking over here now, but he told Mommy, I don't know if I want to do that yet, but yeah, I loved it, man. It was a perfect placement too.
Love it. Neil, this boat?
Yeah, not much more that can be said about this boat. It's a killer boat, and one that I will go back and listen to, which is not something I would find myself saying about Boat, like, ever. But that jam that is kind of on the tail end of Boat is always good, and kind of spicing it up a little bit really has done this song justice, and I think will renew excitement about this song. I hope this isn't another long gap before we hear this again, but I do like what they're doing with the arpeggiator and these jams. That it showed up in Creatures way back in Chicago, way back. Showing up in this jam, shows up later in the show. It's something they are working on. It's something they are playing with, and I love it. And keep slipping it into jams, please.
Yeah,
because it sounds great. And they're no kind of jam band techno act or anything like that, but like this is, I don't know, this is cool stuff, and it is a way of adding a layer to a jam that you're not used to hearing that makes it even that much more exciting. So this is cool stuff. Now it's not only reserved for Slow Ready. You
Right.
get this in other places.
There we go. I think I saw at the edge of the frame there a special guest. Is he there?
He is right here on the floor with his dinosaur. James, do you want to say hi, or are you good?
Hi, James.
Dinosaur?
Hey, bud.
No.
Thumbs up. You have a good time at the show last night? How many Goose shows for James now?
That was his third, so Resonance will be his fourth and fifth. His first two were the Legend Valley. We got family shirts made for Valley last summer. My 44th birthday, and happy early birthday to Jeff. We're birthday buddies by like 19 days apart is all. Yeah. We were born 19 days apart, yeah. So, yeah. His first show had a lot of Jotty contenders there, or his first two shows, June 10th and 11th last year.
Those were good shows.
Oh,
James Borowski, everybody.
James, there
special guest for today.
It sounds like James needs to get pinned on Saturday for his fifth show. We got to get this kid his wings. Yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah.
All right, well, let's continue on talking about this first set here. It closes out with the Hunger Site into Rosalie McFall. Really unexpected song placement here. I had no idea that Goose had even played it before. But, this was really cool to hear. This Hunger Site also gets a little bit of a jam. Interesting improv, little flow down action in the middle there, flow down jamming. But it was weird to see this pop up late set. Also would have expected this song to be, played at one of the festivals this weekend, which still could happen at Resonance. But I think it was Ryan Molnar who tweeted like when you didn't pick Hunger Site and you realized that the show is put on by a radio station, like, of course. So interesting to hear this late set. But I thought the segment was a cool way to end off the first set. Mike, why don't you start us off on this one?
Yeah, and as if the song, you saw me, I was tweeting about it a couple times. That's when I was out there with Lucas. And they started playing that, and I was like, this is a wild placement for this song. So the song selection had been just so interesting. And then the placement was so spot on, like with Old Man's Boat. And then the Hunger Site seemingly came out. I was like, is this the last song of the set? Which would have made sense. And then they play, I grew up on the Monroes and bluegrass and heavy metal, and that's where my weird musical preferences have come from, I guess. Growing up on the foot of the Appalachian Mountains right near Atlanta, it's a lot of different music, right? And so to hear like my current favorite jam band play one of these old songs that I love so much, I see like Billy Strings play a lot, that they've only played once. I was like, what is going on with this set? I just thought it was so cool. It was so random. It was a totally random way, in my opinion. And then they started the second set with one of the most quintessential second set opener. And we're like, we're back in, and then we vibed it out. But we'll wait till we get to there. So just really cool way in retrospect. It was cool then, but even in retrospect, cooler, if that makes sense.
Amazing. Jeff.
Yeah, I was also surprised by Hunger Site, but I mean, you should never be surprised by Goose playing Hunger Site, because if they play it every other night, I mean, that's their prerogative. It's the big radio hit, and it's a big radio hit for a reason. It's a great song, and I mean, they swing and they can't miss with Hunger Site this year. It's a great jam every time, and this one was different. It was really mellow. Instead of launching out of the gates, Rick just kind of sat down and he sort of sat back and just played these little, jangly melodies that just sort of added a little bit of texture to the sounds and just sort of let the band take off and do their thing. If I recall, Jeff was having fun with his hand claps at some points.
Yes, he was.
Which I like those. And is it the timbales are the really, really loud things that are like rack-a-tack-a-tack-a-tack?
Yes,
exactly.
the new timbale.
Yeah. So those were bouncing in there sometimes. And Trevor, you can't hear it on the webcast. Like I listened to, or even on the Bandcamp and Nugs recording, you can't really hear this. But this was the first time of the night that Trevor was just, kind of like deep impact the whole way through, and just doing like really, really cool stuff, like digging downward. It sounded good. I also thought it was going into flow down, but I figured that they were messing with us just because it was a weird kind of night, and they ended up messing with us. I was telling the people around me, I was like, "Don't believe it. It's not flow down. It's a flow down fake out." I never would have guessed in a million years that they would go into what they did end up going into instead. But I figured they were just messing with us.
Yeah, it was a really interesting vibe as we got in. Neil and I were texting like, "Do we tweet the flow down? Is this flow down? What's happening here?"
I'm not doing it.
Yeah. It was really interesting. It came to play. Unique is scary. Hopefully they'll get back to the Cali Magic, Turbulence, Dr. Darkness, Everything Must Go, flow down that we all know and love.
Do it.
Thank you for that, Matt.
What's Speedy's next show? They'll do that one there.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Neil, what did you think of this segment?
I think the interesting thing to note is when they did not put down their instruments and walk up the stage before Hunger Sight began, we were all surprised because that would have been enough of a set to be a set.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't need that Hunger Sight. And we were like, whoa, they might be buying into the second set here, depending on what happens. So like we talked about clock
depending on
earlier.
Length of set break. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we were surprised. I was surprised to see the Hunger Sight, or to hear the Hunger Sight. So that was interesting. And then you never know what you're going to get with Hunger Sight these days. It can really be drawn out. But that was a really cool jam. I mean, Hunger Sight is one of the big bangers right now in terms of jams and in terms of like the song itself. So they love to play it. You get it every third show pretty much now. Or 3 shows in between. So every 4th show. And so that part was cool. And then the transition into what ended up being Rosalie McFall was really fascinating, and I think was awesome. I thought it was great that they were teasing Flowdown. And at that point, I was like, if they actually play Flowdown right now, the wheels have completely fallen off the wagon. There will be no encore. There will be like the smallest second set ever.
Right.
And that's not what ended up happening. And then I guess the one other thing that I want to note about this, I was live tweeting the set list for the first set last night. And then part of the second, but they started playing Rosalie McFall, immediately knew what it was, had no memory of how to spell Rosalie McFall. I was like, is it Rosa Lee? Is it Rosa? Like, I mean, I'm Googling it, trying to figure out like, how do I spell this the right way? Because this is like, I'm bound to fuck this up.
It seems to have both.
On it. Yeah. Well, I mean, it is both. And I think that, it's one of those traditional songs that I think can be done different ways. But yeah, that's what was happening to me in that moment. I was sweating bullets. I was like, no matter what I do here, because it's a traditional song, I'm going to do it wrong, and people are going to freak out. I don't know if that really happened in the end, but no, I mean, I knew the song right away, just from the Grateful Dead playing it, and what a cool treat. And it's only been done once before, and it's a killer song too. It's
319 show bust out. That's got to be one of the biggest bust outs in Goose history up until now. I don't have the stats handy for what the other biggest ones, but I feel like that is the biggest one up to this point, maybe.
I mean, they've only played it once.
Yeah.
So like to even call it a bust out is weird because it's like not even part of their catalog.
It's the last time they played
I mean?
it. Yeah, but it's still, you play a song once and then you play it again 10 years later. That's a show gap. Right. And so 319 shows is pretty huge. And this is also, there are some, I believe, that may have been like hard to handle, was noted on the site as like 400 and something. But
Goose Patriot.
Thank you, Goose Patriot.
Coming through with the facts.
Hard to handle in January was noted as like a 400 and something. But that goes back to 2017 when we're missing a ton of set lists. And so we don't know what the accurate number is. But August 2019, we have accurate information going forward from there at least. And so we can say this is one of the biggest It's one of the biggest bust outs in Goose history. 318, 319, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. And what a way to put an exclamation point on that set.
I mean, I don't know if this is really true, but I have this theory that whenever they're in the Columbus market, they like to play a Grateful Dead song, and maybe something that they haven't done there before. So I don't know how true this is or how far back it goes, but if you go back to Legend Valley last year, there was
the Half Step.
They did Half Step. The year before that, there was the Broke Down Palace debut. And then I believe the year before that, there was a Peggy-O in Columbus also. So yeah, or maybe that was in 2019. You know, did they do anything at the drive-in show at Legend Valley in 2020? Grateful Dead? I don't know.
Maybe,
but yeah,
they did Danger Zone at that show. I know that.
I mean, that's
right. That one too, right?
Well, let's talk about quick set break update here. What were you guys feeling? Jeff, you go first. Vibe at set break. Expectations for set 2.
Yeah, I mean, it was only about a 20-minute break, so I just spent my time looking to see if there were any posters left. There weren't, and then I got some water and a Red Bull to wake up a little bit, and then posted back to the spot and just kind of chatted with folks. Took in the venue a little bit. It's a cool room. Something I'll call out about this place is it's an indoor-outdoor venue where we saw a show at the outdoor venue that can hold around 5,000 people, but the stage is actually reversible. And on the back of the stage is attached to a building. And on the other side of the stage from the outdoor venue is the indoor venue. So the band stands on the same stage for indoor shows as they do for outdoor shows, but they just face a different direction, either in the room or out from the room. And it was pretty cool checking this place out, because I saw the show in Pittsburgh at Stage AE back in February of 2022, and it's the same type of venue built by the same developer even, I think. And there I got to see an indoor show, and I was really happy to finally get to check one of these outdoor shows out. It's a cool concept for a room, especially a downtown room in like a big mixed entertainment sports industrial complex area. It was cool. I'd kind of like to see more of these things.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Mike, what about you? How are you feeling at set break?
It was great, man. I just saw a bunch of people I wanted to see, like ran into Sean McVay and came on the lawn, and then our buddy Nate Cove on Twitter. Lives right across the river in Covington. He was up there with his daughter, and so they came up and hung out. She had her eyes on Katie's little Goose Day, every day's Goose Day slaps to rainbow. She loves rainbows, so we gave her copious amounts of those.
Nice.
So it was fun, just like catching up with people to say hi. I didn't get to see Jeff, but I know I'll see Jeff soon. And we got to dance a couple sets at the Ryman, so that was cool. But no, the vibe was good. And also of note, this venue that Jeff was talking about, this style of venue, right across the river from where Andrew Brady is, where Goose did New Year's, they concurrently in Newport, on the other side from Covington, built one of these type of venues. That's had doesn't get quite as big access, not as big as the one in Columbus, but same concept and same developer. It's an interesting model. The Brady in Cincinnati is really
very cool. Very cool concept. I love it. Let's dive into this second set here. Lots to talk about. Of course, opening up, we've got Into the Mist, into Arcadia. Great way to open the second set. Mike, kick us off here.
There's two of my favorite songs. Arcadia's Like Jive 2, one of my first favorite Goose songs. Like I jokingly tweeted last night, it's always the jam of the year. Whenever they play Arcadia, like Hunger Sight now. Hunger Sight is the new Arcadia, or every time it's played, it's awesome. And it always knocks me down. The one at New Year's, it did literally knock me down, and I had to go take a break. It was too hard. And so it always makes me really happy. And Katie and James left at that point. James was ready to go to the hotel, and that's cool. He's got a long weekend ahead of him. And as y'all know, I think he's been to a lot of shows this summer. He's a real trooper. So Katie and James went and then left me in the care of Sean McVay. And we vibed out hard the second set, and that was a great way to kick it off. And Katie was like, "Oh, gee, it's good exit music. If you have to leave and listen to something on the way out," Katie was happy to have that be the exit song. It was beautiful. And it went hard. It went pretty good.
Yeah, it was great. Jeff?
I I was really happy to hear Mist. I've had it in my fantasy picks for a few shows running now, and to the point where I was getting ready to take it off if they didn't play it last night. But was happy to hear it, and was excited for the Mist Jam. Didn't get that, but never going to argue with an Arcadia, no matter where you want to slap it in. And I mean, it was a good version. It was a solid version. Wasn't expecting to hear it, same as Hunger Sight, but being a radio station show, once again, not surprised to hear both of those, like mega big hit bangers come in with all the obscurities,
100%. Yeah. Unfortunately for, lovers of finished Mists, which is everybody, another unfinished Mist, which we've been seeing a lot of recently, they've been enjoying this kind of like, instead of, going into the jam and then leaving it unfinished, which they did a bunch last year, just kind of spacing out for a couple of minutes. That's how the Dragonfly happened at the Warfield in April, which was so cool. But last night, you get a couple of minutes of space before it kind of forms into Arcadia. Jeff going wild on those samples again, just like all sorts of different sounds. But this was a great Arcadia as well. Kind of that Metersy vibe, or the tribute to Gold kind of vibe, not a tease, but the vibe. Clav tweet. Neil, over to you on these first two songs of the second set.
Yeah, I was thinking about it at set break, and I was like, there really only can be two songs that can happen here. It's either going to be Wisteria Lane, or it's going to be Into the Mist. So I mean, I knew it right away. The second those like first couple notes hit, I was like, okay, so it's Into the Mist. And again, keeping with the theme of really long bust outs, I forget how many it was since it was last played. I think it was like a 12
since
or something like
since
that.
the Warfield, 13 shows.
13 or 12. So yeah, that was cool. And then Arcadia was a real surprise because that one was Short Rest, and two, I thought for sure they were going to be playing that at Peach because they love playing Arcadia at fest sets.
Mm-hmm.
So I did not see that one coming at all. Always good. This one had a little extra flavor to it, as you said, where it's got that kind of that weird disco funk thing going on that, like, I don't even know what you want to call it, but
awesome. I call it awesome.
Yeah, that was really, really cool. Some people were saying it was the greatest Arcadia of all time. I think some people were just caught up in the moment. Don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but I agree with their enthusiasm. That was super fun.
Yeah, and I think during that kind of weird disco funk Arcadia was one of the parts of the show where Jeff was doing the stuff I like most with his hand claps, where instead of just kind of hitting out like a bang, 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 bang rhythm on the hand claps, he kind of does like a little glitchy thing, almost like you hear at the beginning of the Nash Cakes from 2022. Like I really like it when he kind of does these weird little like techno glitch music things with the hand claps where they kind of like that's way cooler than just trying to get everybody clapping in
right.
rhythm, which doesn't always work well with jam band fans.
Definitely Neil, just to let you know, in case you're not reading the chat, everybody is pleased with your choice of room today, and no bathroom. Second set, the meat of the second set, if you will. We've got the Rosewood into Dripfield. I mean, what a segment. This Rosewood is all about Ben Atkin. This is a drumming clinic, just attacking his toms. There's a switch on a snare drum where you can make it sound like a snare or make it sound more like a tom. And so he put it in kind of Tommy mode, and it was rhythmic. It was amazing. And Peter on the piano and on the marimba and all sorts of different textures. But this jam is awesome. Probably the thing from the show that'll make my playlist. And then Dripfield is always awesome. A nice 15-minute version. Loved the Arkansas Traveler tease from Rick and Peter in there. That was funny when we were freaking out, like, what? Like, I know that song. I know what it is. And, I was brought up when I was really little. My dad would play Garcia and Grisman, Not for Kids Only, all the time. And so I was like, that's what that is. Like, of course, I love that song. I texted my dad, who wasn't watching with me last night, and he was like Arkansas Traveler, like that one, like really? I was like, yeah. But this was a great segment. Jeff, or actually Neil, I feel like we keep getting to you after everything's been said, and there's so much being said.
Hey man, I'm just here for the input. No, and this was, I mean, this is the meat of the set, as you put it. I don't know if I actually have much to say about this other than I really like the places that this Rosewood goes. I really missed Rosewood,
Yeah.
and I might say something controversial. Like it felt like the song did show a little rust when they were playing the song. Like it didn't feel like super perfectly executed, but when they got to the jam section, it was like putting on an old boot. I mean, it was perfect. And yeah,
I
it
love
just
old
sounded really,
boots.
really good. Yeah, you just like lacing up an old boot. So I don't know, is that a weird turn of phrase? In any
No,
case,
I'm just making
it
fun of
was
you.
nice. And like that's one of those jams that like I will put on like if I just want to like chill and just listen to some nice dreamy music that's gonna have me floating away a little bit. And yeah, you've already said it. The way it kind of melts into what becomes Dripfield is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And that Dripfield, we already talked about it. It has like that arpeggiator jam in the beginning, and then it's got that little ditty in there, which is just yet another nice treat in this show. There were all these kind of like little earworms in this show that popped up in different places. Like it popped up in Arcadia. It popped up in, well, I guess here as well. I'm kind of blanking on the third place I was trying to think of, but it definitely did. And yeah, man, all good stuff.
Love it. Love it. Jeff, these two songs for you.
So Rosewood is the song I went into wanting to see last night. That was the one I was hoping for. So the second they went into that space before even starting the song, I knew it was on, and it was a good Rosewood. Neil, I might agree with your controversial take there a little bit, in that I've seen Rosewoods and heard Rosewoods that are more transcendent than that one was during the song portion itself. I don't think there was anything bad with it. They weren't like messing it up. It just didn't hit those heights that the song sometimes can during the song itself. Right. But yeah, this Rosewood was all about the jam, and it reminded me a lot of some of the Fall 21 Rosewood jams, where it was just, like Ryan, like you mentioned, Ben just went off and ran this kind of tribal drums clinic and let the band spiral around it with ideas that they were coming up with. And I think my favorite of those ideas was when Peter was on his vibes, probably not intentionally, but perhaps intentionally, teasing the Donna Lewis 80s classic, I Love You, Always Forever. So you may know that song. It's like, I love you always forever. Da, 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 da. Here, I'll play you a second of it.
Oh,
Can you hear this?
I want to ask Peter about this now.
All right.
I'm gonna guess based on the fact that he didn't include it in the Bandcamp notes that it wasn't intentional, but I definitely want to ask him about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he had no idea what he was even teasing, but as he was playing it, he was like, "This is familiar." And then he didn't shy away from it. He kind of like doubled down on it and went harder and harder on it and took it for a couple minutes worth of laps. At any rate, big thanks to Blaze of Shame on Twitter for helping me earlier today figure out what song that was, because that's been earworming me ever since the show. And that was kind of the last part of the jam. I think that was the second half of the Rosewood jam before they went into the drip transition. And something really cool about this drip transition is I've really been enjoying what Rick's been doing with his delay pedals and reverse delay when he gets down on his knees and just plays with his pedal boards. And he did that for a few minutes last night during the lead up into drip out of this Rosewood, and it was to great effect. It was really cool. And I mean, drip, every time you see that live, it's the best Goose song that there is when you see it live. And last night was no different. It's always great. It felt longer than it was. Cool little jam. Did a few different things, and towards the end of that jam, the arpeggiator came back yet again.
Love it.
And then it moved into Slow Ready, which is the arpeggiator song. So it was kind of like it was like the arpeggiator trio jam. That the final part of the trio was the arpeggiator song. This I'm surely wasn't intentional and just stuff that happened, but it was really cool.
I love it. Mike, your thoughts on, I guess, Rosewood Dripfield Slow Ready. Give it to us.
Yeah, so it's my favorite segment. 3 of my favorite tunes. Big Team Slow guy. Again, played at New Year's, and it was perfectly placed, so I could sit down and take a break and just kind of chill a little bit before we carried on the rest of the show. So I love all 3 of the tunes, and like I said earlier when we were chatting before, I think I said it on Twitter that live, the Dripfield was my favorite, or I think I might even said it already on this, but listening back, the Rosewood Jam, I hear what everybody's saying about the Rosewood itself. It was fun. It was a good core part of the song, but the jam was really good. And what I liked about it, and what I like about Goose, and what I like about Fish and bands that I really, really like, Peter Gabriel, I could list, is they're patient. They're not afraid to be patient. The jam was this, and you described it as like sort of Ben, and I like that Jeff sort of, letting people circle around Ben, but that for me, it's the patience they have. It's something as a songwriter and a band leader I try to work on and get better at, because I get really excited like they do, or like Trey certainly. I can't calm down.
Right.
But when they get patient with it, it's just awesome. And you're talking about just put it on, and chill if you just need something to chill to. It was really, really patient, and I like when they do that. And then coming out of that with the sort of, playing with the pedals and everything in a Dripfield. I hate to keep doing the comparisons, but it's hard not to for me. It reminds me a lot of, again, Trey in the late 90s when he started playing around with stuff, moving his guitar around like a lightsaber and being silly and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it was cool as hell. I remember when he started doing the delay. First time I heard it in Cleveland, I thought that a fire alarm was going off. I was like, what the hell's going on? And so last night I thought of that, Trey or Rick's down there. But it's got a cool effect. It's got a really cool
it kind of comes at you with this very high pitched thing. It's like he does it in Butterflies too, which we haven't heard that in a while. I'd be okay with.
We haven't heard that in a while. Well, they'll probably do it in Ohio. They did Legend Valley last year was the bust out. Anyhow, so that was great. And then Slow Ready, what a cool way to end the show, I thought. And I thought maybe they might have done a non-core. And then when they stopped, I was like, all right, 15 minutes. And then when they start, they started talking, I was like, oh, this will be a perfect tight boom.
For it.
And it was perfect. It's probably my favorite Goose song. So I'm happy.
Yeah, the tumble encore was a nice exclamation mark. I'm sure Neil is the most sad that we will not be getting a Peach Tumble this year. As the Peach Tumble guy from last year, it was heartbreaking to get that last night. I needed the fantasy points, but I was sad to not be getting Tumble tomorrow at Peach. But this was a great exclamation point on an amazing show. Jeff, you got anything to add on this Tumble before we wrap up?
I mean, just what a great encore. Mike mentioned it's his favorite Goose song, and there's so many people who can say the same, and it's just always a great song. And it's a nice exclamation point, quick little fiery jam, and it fit that show and fit that slot really well. You were mentioning Peach Tomorrow, and can I say a couple things about Peach Tomorrow?
Absolutely.
First of all, I'm excited to see 2 of you gentlemen at Peach tomorrow, plus anybody else who's going to be there, because I'm going also. But tomorrow is also my birthday. The pod has been known to get results. This is a really long pod. There's probably no one listening anymore.
There are.
Oh, sweet.
There are. Yeah,
we got 25 people on right now.
We're we're interesting, Jeff. Get used to it. We're interesting.
High quality guests.
Apparently. All right. So for the 25 people that are listening, or anybody who listens later, I'm not really one to make requests. I just throw things out into the void and see what happens. But tomorrow's my birthday. 726 is my favorite Goose song by far, and I also really like Lead Up a lot too. But Lucas is going to be at Resonance and he won't be at Peach. So if Lead Up is going to be played tomorrow, maybe play it Saturday night at Resonance too. Because,
all right. Let's not be picky here.
I'm looking out for Lucas here, but at any rate, 726 is such a great song, and just imagine the power and majesty of a song so big in a venue so big with so many people.
You want it real quick? Can I close a loop on something right now that always sits in my brain?
Close the
The
loop.
crazy thing about all this is Jeff is not incorrect about anything he said about 726, and it's his birthday tomorrow. What is wild is 726, July 26th, is my wife's birthday. And so when I first heard that song and the association it had with me of the love, and then I learned what the name of it was when I got it. I was like, oh, 726. I was like, oh my God, it's my wife's birthday. So anyway, there's a crazy. I just wanted to close that loop. Pretty cool.
What if the song is about your wife?
It might, and that's cool with me. If she's got a thing for Chris, I want to jam. I want to get on. Look, I got songs. I got good songs. If we're putting requests into the ether now, Ryan, I'm Mike Morosky. I got a couple records.
There you go.
I have my guitar at Resonance. I can hop up with the band. I'll have my guitar.
Yeah,
do it.
And I'll sit on Moby tomorrow. Neil, what were you going to say?
Yeah.
No, I think the right way to do this, to kind of put it out into the world, is to kind of talk about how it's been a shame that it hasn't been played in so long.
Yeah.
So the right way to do this is say, it's been 16 shows since they played 726. That is a crime, and it needs to be played.
There you go.
I think we
that's
can
how you do
also
it.
say, yeah, it's been 2 years almost since they played Lily's Tiger.
Oh,
So
please.
let's solve that problem too. Let's solve that problem at Peach, because it's just not fair to the community that loves this band so much to be deprived of a Lily's Tiger for 2 years.
Amen.
And my third Lily's Tiger at that.
Okay, Mr.
But yeah, man,
100%.
there's still some songs out there and that need to be played, and I gotta say a few of them right now. Like, it's been 18 shows since they played Doc Brown. It's been 17 shows, 17 since they've played Wisteria Lane. That doesn't even seem possible.
It was
I
on
don't
the
even know how that's
last night.
possible. But whoever gets it this weekend, whether it's the folks at Peach or the folks at Resonance, man, you're lucky, because I feel like it's gonna come out in the next 3 days, and it's gonna be an absolute scorcher. Yeah. And I'm psyched for you if you're gonna see it. I'm psyched for myself if I'm lucky enough to see it.
The crazy thing about the crazy thing about the Wisteria gap to me is I think of, like, the early 2022 Wisteria gap between San Francisco and DC being so long, but that's only 11 shows. This is 17 shows. Where is Wisteria?
Yeah. It's just like, it's not fair.
It's waiting to tear faces off skulls.
I know. It's gonna happen this weekend at some point, and I'm excited for it. I cannot wait to see Goose tomorrow. First, I'm seeing Snarky Puppy tonight. It's kicking off a fantastic weekend. I cannot wait. Jeff and Neil, I will see you guys tomorrow. Mike, safe travels up to Garrettsville. Have a lovely weekend.
Yep.
I'm going to give Jeff a hug to give you.
Yes.
Just so you know, so we're on the same page here.
For sure. Yeah.
I'll bring you a lot here.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. Everybody, have yourselves a fantastic day. Neil and I will be back live from somewhere at Peach on Friday, talking about tomorrow night's show.
See what happens.
It's something TBD, where we will be broadcasting from. So don't forget, also, there is a Peach webcast available for all Nug subscribers. Resonance, unfortunately, is not being broadcast, but Peach is at 10, I believe, tomorrow. Don't quote me on that. Check the Peach schedule. But it's going to be fun. I cannot wait to see Goose again. So thank you once again, Mike and Jeff, for being on the pod today. This has been lovely. I love, these lengthy episodes, getting really into the meat of a show. It's been a pleasure. Thank you guys. And everybody, thank you for tuning into this episode of Day After Show. Have a fantastic day.
Love y'all.
And we will see you guys next time.